Okay, awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Eric. I am the co-founder of Upskill Specialists, which is an adult executive function coaching practice. While we predominantly work with people online, I am located in San Clemente. So good timing with the Orange County, some of the Orange County members being here as well. I also am an educational therapist. So I have another practice that's much smaller where I work with neurodivergent students. But today we are focused on adult executive function skills, specifically talking about task initiation and procrastination. This is the most common challenge that I see when working with clients, whether it's one-on-one or in groups. And like we've all been there where like it's like this new notebook or I've time blocked my day or my to-do list is ready to go. And when the time comes to actually get started, we like sing that procrastination song of I don't feel like doing it now. I'll do it tomorrow. And then we know what happens when we wake up tomorrow. This isn't caused by a lack of willpower. And a lot of us have probably heard this, but it's true where it's not caused by laziness. We're going to get into the real causes of procrastination, but my goal is for all of you to leave tonight with a evidence-based 3-step framework to help you get started. A little bit more about kind of who I am. So that's me in 5th grade when I was diagnosed with ADHD and auditory processing disorder and specific learning disabilities in reading and writing. So as you can imagine, like school was not the easiest thing for me. I around this age in 5th grade, I also became very aware of how behind I was compared to my peers, and it absolutely destroyed my self-esteem. As I think back to it, I realized that trying to do school felt like I was trying to push a boulder up a mountain. Like I worked my butt off for B's and C's pretty much all through college. And all my friends made it seem like things were so much easier if you just studied hard or like just do your homework or how could you forget that thing? And for me, it just wasn't clicking for so long. When I got into college, some things started to shift. So I was a college athlete, which was amazing because I was like forced into this family. Like I immediately found a tribe of people with a shared interest. I started to feel much less alone because a lot of the other guys on the team were also struggling in school. And as my success and crew started to build, so did my confidence. And some of those limiting beliefs that I had developed met over many years of struggling in school started to shift slightly. And that's when I also discovered my second passion. My first passion is surfing, which is why I have a picture of it up there because I identify essentially as a surfer. It's something I try to do almost every single day. It brings me so much joy, and I can definitely hyper focus on surfing. But what I also discovered was I really loved teaching. And I discovered that if I might be able to be a teacher and pass on some things to younger kids to help them maybe not struggle in the same way I did in school. And again, like in hindsight, I realized I started to do better in school when I started to take classes about education because I was so passionate about it. And like when I can hyper focus on something, I can go and go and go. And all of a sudden, not getting C's in any of my classes about education because I was so interested in it. And, you know, through a few other twists and turns and living in other areas, I eventually started Upskill Specialists because I slowly started to learn that executive function skills are like everything. And when we have strategies and tools to address some of those executive function gaps, things just get so much easier. So the big one we're going to talk about tonight is task initiation. And I want to start off with a little like mindset practice for all of us. So I do this with clients pretty often. We might start a session this way, but I'd like you just to take a moment and consider for the next hour or so, who do you need to be to get the most out of this meeting? I asked myself this question before I logged in this evening, and I just went with the three words that came to mind, which were energized, focused, and curious. So that's who I'm going to try to be tonight. Okay. So I know we're talking about one executive function skill, but I just want to take a moment to go over what executive function is in general. It's a little odd, but there's still no agreed upon definition of executive function skills, nor is there a set number. So depending on who you read from or who you talk to, you might get some different answers. I did my coaching certification under Dr. Peg Dawson and Richard Guare, who write the Smart But Scattered series, which is a great series. And they have a book for adults too, which is really, really helpful. But so I use their model, which is that there are 12 executive function skills, which you can see on the screen here. Our big one is task initiation. But as you're going to also learn, emotional control plays a huge piece in managing procrastination. All right. So let's make sure we have a definition of procrastination here. It is a voluntary delay of an intended action despite knowing we're going to be worse off because of the delay. So it's those moments when we know what we like should do or what we want to do, but just can't get ourselves to start. And I think it's important to note that not all delays are procrastination. So we have to be really careful here, because if we start to call ourselves a procrastinator, or if we start to identify as a procrastinator, it can be really difficult to start to manage that limiting belief. So an example of like a delay that isn't procrastination, one that I use quite often when I do presentations like this, is like last night with my laundry. I had laundry on the to-do list and I intended to do it, but it was really nice out and I had some extra time, and my wife asked if I wanted to go on a walk with her and the dog, which is way more fun than doing laundry. And also, like, I value having some extra free time and spending it with my wife. So I intentionally chose not to do laundry. I put it on the to-do list for today, and I will be getting it done when we're done after this thing tonight. So keep that in mind. Not all delays are procrastination, but when we know we're going to be worse off because of the delay and we just can't get ourselves to start, that's when procrastination is creeping in. So the opposite of procrastination is task initiation. This is our ability to begin a task without undue procrastination in a timely fashion. That's like the fancy definition. In other words, it's basically being able to start even when we really don't want to. There's a really big cost to procrastination that can be often overlooked, because procrastination can have a really negative impact on our physical health, our mental health, and possibly even financially. This is really why I became so passionate about task initiation. Not only was I seeing it come up so often, but I also was starting to really recognize and learn about the serious costs, like putting off going to the gym or starting a new diet, avoiding scheduling doctor's appointments or dentist appointments, delaying important conversations, telling ourselves like, I'll get to that book when I have time. And quite often for many of us, like not applying to certain jobs, even though we might be really unhappy in our current role. And the big outcome of procrastination is sabotaging our happiness and fulfillment. Happiness and fulfillment come from pursuing goals, not necessarily accomplishing them, but pursuing them. So if we procrastinate and we avoid pursuing our goals, we rob ourselves of happiness and fulfillment. And a lot of this probably isn't news to you, right? Not a lot of us know this stuff, and it's not groundbreaking research or amazing things I discovered. But despite knowing all of this, 95% of people procrastinate occasionally, 42% procrastinate daily, and 20 to 25% procrastinate constantly. That's a huge number. And I think, again, it just speaks to like, this is why I am so passionate about executive function skills and task initiation. Because if we can learn how to manage procrastination and procrastinate a little bit less, we are going to open up so many more opportunities for happiness and fulfillment. So I also want to be transparent in that I still procrastinate on occasion. And even though I use my framework, sometimes other things get in the way. And I was thinking about whether or not I was going to share this story, but I think it connects well to all of this. And I think it'll be helpful as we go through the framework to kind of see how I can use it in this scenario, and also for all of you to notice where the roadblocks were and what's getting in the way. To keep the story short, I got married in July 2024, so it's been almost a year. I have not sent out any thank you cards. And to make matters worse, out of the like roughly 100 that I need to send, 90 of them are written in an envelope addressed with a stamp on it. So that means I have to write 10, probably 5, because I can split them with my wife, address them, stamp them, and go to the post office, which is maybe a 2-minute drive. Not kidding, every single week since last August, send thank you cards has been a weekly goal. And getting back to the happiness and fulfillment piece, like I feel really bad. Like I feel like I can't use the words to describe how I feel because they're not appropriate. I feel like a bad person. Like I don't think my friends and family really care. They probably don't even notice or forgot. But the shame of like, these people spent money. A lot of them flew across the country. They gave me a gift and I can't send a thank you card. Like it makes me think, I'm like, what's wrong with me? That's the self-talk that pops up, which isn't helpful and sabotages my happiness. And yes, it's on my to-do list. Supposedly it's going to happen tomorrow. So we'll see if this meeting and going through the framework with all of you helps me get it done. So why do we do this to ourselves? Like we know it's not we know it's not healthy. We know it's not helpful. A massive percentage of us still do it, possibly every single day. It's not a motivation issue. Motivation's this like fleeting emotion that when we have it, jump on it and use it. But we can't wait around to be motivated to do everything. We'll probably be waiting a long time to do a lot of the things that we need to do. We don't need to have motivation to get started. And it's also not an issue of time management. Calendaring, time blocking, to-do lists, the Eisenhower matrix, all very helpful tools, not going to help you initiate tasks. And this was a big misunderstanding for a long time. And it wasn't until like the early 2000s that we started to realize that procrastination is caused by emotion. Procrastination is a short-term solution to escape these negative emotions that we face when dealing with a challenging or an unpleasant task. It's really a reward-seeking behavior because by not doing the thing that is causing fear, anxiety, boredom, or confusion, we don't have to deal with that emotion. So we actually feel better in the moment. Like procrastination feels good for a second, maybe for a day. And then eventually it comes back to haunt us. So this is a key piece to the framework. It's going to tie directly to step 1. You can always figure out, or you can always distill down procrastination to one of the 4 emotions you see here. So it's always fear, anxiety, boredom, or confusion. Sometimes a combination of a few. Keep that in mind. It's going to be really helpful in a moment. I just added this in because about a month ago, Mark Manson, who's the author of The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F, came out with a 3 or 4 hour podcast all about procrastination. It is very long. It took me a very long time to get through it. And it's great, by the way, if you're interested and you really love long form content podcasts, the podcast is called Solved. I think he only has 2 episodes out now, so you'll find procrastination pretty easily. But he shared this graphic that he created, which ties in exactly to this framework and exactly to what we've been talking about. So procrastination starts in this top left circle where there's the trigger, which is the negative emotion. So he included anxiety, boredom, and overwhelm. I would add confusion to that list, and I would remove overwhelm and add fear, because overwhelm's mostly a combination of anxiety and fear. So usually if we're feeling overwhelmed, we can distill it down to possibly a combination of anxiety and fear. But that's the trigger. So this is where procrastination begins. It sends us over to the behavior, which is where we avoid, and we start to feel good. We distract ourselves somehow. Maybe we productively procrastinate by organizing a closet instead of sending emails or whatever it is. And that sends us into this immediate relief. It's that temporary comfort, reduces the anxiety or reduces the negative emotion, which eventually translates into increased long-term distress. It's like the guilt, the shame, the dealing with trying to get something done at the last second, or that negative self-talk. The like, for me, the why can't I just send thank you cards? So keep in mind that task initiation feels like pushing a boulder up a mountain. But I argue that there's a mindset shift we can do here that changes a lot of things. Because in reality, the boulder, which is the thing you have to do, it's not at the bottom of the mountain, it's at the top. And all you need is the right tool to give yourself a little leverage to get that big boulder rolling. And quite often, that's the momentum that's going to carry that boulder all the way to the bottom. And that's exactly what this framework does for breaking the procrastination cycle. So it's 3 steps. Step number 1, you've already had a hint at. It's to identify the emotion that's getting in the way. So we catch ourselves avoiding something, and we can pause for a second and get curious and just say, all right, is it fear? Am I feeling anxious? Is this thing super boring? Am I confused about how to start or what the finished product looks like? Identifying the emotion is easier for some people, more difficult for others. There's some skill involved here that comes with practice. If you find it hard, I recommend taking step 1 and turning it into like a short journal exercise, or going on a walk, turning on a voice memo on your phone, and just like word vomiting all the stuff that's coming up, all the stuff that you're feeling. And as you do that, keeping these 4 emotions in the back of your mind, because more often than not, as you do that, you'll start to kind of figure it out. Like, oh, this is a lot of like anxiety coming up through like this voice memo or as I'm writing, or maybe it's fear. Oh, I actually don't know how to finish this thing. So that's why I'm having trouble starting. So let's use my example here of not sending thank you cards. The emotion that gets in the way for many months was boredom, and it is now also fear, because now I have to deal with the possibility, and I have friends who will do this, who will get the thank you card and call or text me and be like, thanks for sending that 1 year later. Which I have friends who will do it in a loving, funny way. But I also, like, truthfully, I'm fearful that some people will get it and be like, really? Type of thing. And like, who knows what they're going to think of me. So those are my 2 emotions. It's a combo for me now. Step 2 is acknowledge and accept. So as we identify the emotion, we can now name it. We acknowledge that, like, this is how I'm feeling. There's nothing wrong with it. There might be some legitimacy behind it, and that's okay. Accepting that emotion is a very high level skill. I definitely have not mastered it yet. And so if somehow feeling acceptance around whatever emotion is coming up feels really, really difficult, I say just skip that part. The key is to name it and acknowledge it and be like, this is the thing. Okay, this is the roadblock. It's this emotion. So I've already done step 2 in a way. I named it and I acknowledged fear and boredom. I can accept the boredom, the fear part, and accepting that some people may think badly of me. I might be able to accept that because I'm also kind of mind reading, and I have no proof that that's even true. And this brings us to our final step. Step 3 is to intentionally select a tool. This is that thing that's going to give you leverage to get the boulder rolling from the top of the mountain. The key is to have a tool that's designed to manage the emotion that's getting in the way. You wouldn't want to use like a hammer to put a screw into a piece of wood. You probably could, but it would be really hard, and you would probably destroy the wood as you're doing it. But a drill would be pretty easy and get that screw into the wood nice and smooth. So what we're going to go into next is I want to share 2 or 3 tools for each one of those emotions that cause procrastination. I selected these tools based off of research I've done and how effective they are for most people. And then also by talking with a lot of my clients. Not every tool is going to work for every brain. And what works today might not work tomorrow. And what doesn't work today might work tomorrow. So the key is to fill up this toolbox with 2 or 3 tools for each emotion. That way you have something that you can pull out and try to see if it helps you get started. And if it doesn't work, it's like, okay, I don't throw the tool in the trash. I put it back in the toolbox and I grab a different one. I'm going to test this one out instead. We're going to start with fear. The first strategy is to determine the first smallest step. Figuring out that first step and making it so simple, you would be silly not to do it. I like to do this by like brain dumping steps into a Google Doc. So I'll type them, or voice to text actually is even better for me. Voice to text them into a Google Doc. And maybe I think I identify a good starting point. And I want to make it so simple, I would be silly not to do it. It might be open the computer, put on my socks. If it's those thank you cards, it's grabbing the box, which is right under my desk right now, and bringing it out to the kitchen table. I'm not even opening the box, but I can put it on the kitchen table. Sometimes some of my clients will get tripped up on this, and they're like, okay, I think that could work, but like, I can't figure out the first step. I then say, just start anywhere. Like ideally, yeah, we start at the beginning of whatever this project or whatever this thing is, but starting somewhere is better than not starting at all. And if you can relieve some of that pressure on yourself to start in the right spot and just go for it for whatever simple step feels doable, that's like the best place to begin. The next strategy to manage fear is to untangle the story that you're telling yourself from what's actually happening. And I do this through 4 questions. So the 4 questions that help us untangle the stories we tell ourselves start with, what am I believing? Then asking yourself, what am I doing or not doing to reinforce this belief? What would I rather believe? And then what is one small, simple action I can take to reinforce this new belief? I adapted these questions from a people-pleasing seminar, I would call it, and realized I was like, oh, I can kind of take those and adapt them to help manage fear that causes procrastination. And then as an aside, if you catch yourself dealing with any like imposter syndrome tendencies, these questions are also super effective. So anything about self-doubt or fear, these questions are awesome. Taking some time to journal, voice memo, however, but just go through them. And what's great about them is you create a new belief and then you identify that simple step to start reinforcing it. Those are my top 2 strategies for managing fear. All right. Up next is anxiety. This is a big one. I think like there's so much overlap between ADHD and anxiety. I notice anxiety comes up a lot with a lot of like clients and people that I talk with. So the top 3 that I have, keeping in mind, like these are the top 3 that I've done research on that my clients use, but you might be able to find something better for you. The first one is take a walk in 3-3-3. So we get outside, which is great for managing anxiety. We get some movement, also great for managing anxiety. And while we're on this walk, we can search for 3 things we can see, 3 things you can hear, and then 3 body parts that you notice are moving. And this kind of one we can make really fun, because if you're walking around somewhere you live, like a place you're familiar with, you can search for like 3 things you've never noticed before, 3 things you can see that you've never seen before, 3 things you can hear that you've never heard before, and then 3 ways your body's moving that we're not always aware. And then when we get home, hopefully what this has done is just reduced our anxiety levels a notch, enough for us to get started. Up next is breath work. Box breathing is a really popular breath work strategy for managing anxiety. And the physiological side that I'll mention in a moment, I think is becoming more well-known and more popular. But these strategies really work for anxiety because when we're anxious, our heart rate is elevated and our breath rate is elevated. But when we box breathe or when we do a physiological sigh, we're forcing our heart rate and our breath rate down. That's why they work so well, just for that momentary like anxiety relief. Again, we're just like opening the door a little bit so we can get started on whatever the thing is. For anybody who doesn't know yet, box breathing, as you can see in this graphic here, involves 4 breaths, I would say. The first one is we breathe in for 4 seconds. You hold it for 4 seconds. You breathe out for 4 seconds. And you hold that out breath for 4 seconds. 4 seconds is the like technical amount of time, I guess, you're supposed to use, but there's no rules here. The key is to slow down your breath intentionally and spend just a few moments focusing on it. Let's give it a try. If you would like to, you do not have to, but if you're open to it, we'll do a 1 round of box breathing. And what I'll do is I'll count on my fingers so you can kind of follow along. I'll use the count of 4. If you want to go a little bit shorter, that's totally fine. All right, so we'll breathe in, hold, breathe out, and hold. Every time I do this, it's like, I know it's just for a few moments, but there's like this real sense of calm. It's really cool. So the other one that I actually use more often now is the physiological sigh. This involves more like, I guess you can do box breathing like do as a nasal breathing, but the physiological sigh is specifically nasal breathing. You breathe in through your nose, and right when you've taken like that full breath, you breathe in a little bit more, and then you let it out. So I'll try to like really over exaggerate it so you can get a sense of what it looks like. It's like this. What's really cool about these 2 strategies is you can do them around other people and no one has any idea. Because in reality, if I were to do a physiological sigh, it would look like this. And most likely you couldn't even tell that I was breathing any differently. All right, so we have the take a walk in the 3-3-3 grounding strategy. We have some breath work. And the last one for anxiety is the 10-minute timer. This is where we tell ourselves, I'm going to do the first step for 10 minutes, and then I'll decide if I want to continue. What we're really doing is we're just reducing the barrier to entry to starting the task. And again, there's no rules here. Do the task for 2 minutes and then decide if you want to continue. For 5 minutes, whatever it is, 1 minute, 30 seconds. The key is just trying to be intentional, reducing anxiety for a moment, and then deciding if you want to continue when you're done, when the timer goes off. And if you do, great. Like that boulder's rolling and you have some momentum. And if not, that's fine. You got started. And I know it feels silly, but if we can, again, shift our mindsets to celebrating those small wins and really acknowledging that as like, I did start, even if it was for 10 minutes. I started the thing I've been avoiding for however many days, months. That's a win. Like, imagine how cool it would be if we really felt the small wins. Like, what if just starting a task for 10 minutes could mean you had a good week? There's no rules to say otherwise. And I really believe that if we can start to shift our mindset when it comes to starting things as just for a few minutes, or I tried the breathwork strategy and today's a win. Like if we can shift into that mindset, a lot of other great stuff starts to snowball and starts to happen. Number 3, sorry everyone, these slides are way out of order. I did a bad job with my animations. I apologize. Number 3 here is boredom. Body doubling is my personal favorite strategy for task initiation. Yuli and I and Suzanne were talking about this earlier. I have a weekly body doubling session on Tuesdays at 11. and it is possibly my most productive hour every single week. What I've started to do is when I make my to-do list for the day, I will identify the thing I want to do least, seems most boring, and I save it for that 11 o'clock time slot. It's just so helpful having someone else doing focused work close by. I skipped over the definition of body doubling, got excited about it. I apologize. Body doubling is doing focused work near someone else who is also engaged in focused work. It can be in person, it can be on Zoom, which is the way that I do it. We can body double with strangers at libraries, at coffee shops. And there are some really great apps for body doubling as well. I think FocusMate is still free. As Suzanne mentioned, Chad has body doubling opportunities, and there are some paid for apps for body doubling as well. Some of them specifically for people with ADHD. And the other thing about body doubling is whether you have ADHD or you're neurotypical, it's really helpful. So I would really, really encourage all of you, if you take away just one thing from tonight, it's to try to get a body doubling session on the calendar sometime this week or next week. All right. The other ways to manage boredom is to try to make the task novel. So with our ADHD brains and our interest-based nervous systems, novelty is something we often seek. If we can turn things that are boring into being more novel, they're easier to start. This could be putting on music. This could be changing your environment. So going to work somewhere else, or just working from the couch or at the kitchen table. Novelty can also come through like setting a timer and trying to finish something within a certain amount of time. Any way that you can switch it up and just make this boring task a little different can be really helpful. And the last key piece for boredom is to consider energy management, because starting boring tasks takes a lot more energy than starting fun tasks. And if we can begin to structure some of our days in a way in which we can do, or we can start boring things when we have the most energy, when we feel most focused, we lower that barrier to entry. We make it a little bit easier to get started. Thinking about my example here, because I said the two emotions were boredom and fear. The boredom is less now. It was more so for like the past, maybe the first 3 or 4 months of avoiding the thank you cards. I wish, in hindsight, I had just finished those last 10 during one of my body doubling sessions. That's what I should have done. And as I'm thinking about this now, I think I could throw on some music. I've been listening to a lot of Lane 8 recently. Lane 8's an awesome DJ for working. I think I could put on some Lane 8 and maybe that would make it a little bit less boring. It definitely would. It would be a little bit more enjoyable. All out of order again. All right, here we go. The last emotion is confusion. So my top 2 strategies is number 1 is to offload the confusion. We can use AI tools like Magic To Do or ChatGPT or any of the other AIs out there to help us break down tasks into clear steps. We can even you can ask ChatGPT, I should say, really specific questions and find like usually really clear, helpful answers. Whenever I'm faced with something that's just really confusing and I'm avoiding it, I go straight to ChatGPT now. And I just am really clear, like, hey, I'm really stuck on this thing. It's confusing. I'm procrastinating. Break it down into smaller steps. And then I might even say, like, make that first step so simple, I would be silly not to do it. So like using that quote. And quite often, once we can distill that first simple step, we can then say, all right, I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes and I'm going to try it and see what happens. And then the next one, which is a tough one for a lot of us, I know it was for me, especially when I was a student, is asking for help. What I've found to be really effective here is to first come up with a solution. This gives us some confidence. It shows the person that we're asking for help from that we've put thought into it and we're not just like, I don't get it, help me. Like, no, we've actually tried. And it's really about showing an active problem solving approach. This strategy is really helpful at work, makes you look really good to your managers, boss, director, whoever. If you approach them and say, like, hey, I'm really stuck on this project. I'm thinking I should start here, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this. And they might be like, oh, you're right, you're on it. Or they might say, oh, that's a good idea. Like, but I would actually try doing X, Y, and Z first. Yeah, that active problem solving approach, it makes us feel good. It boosts our confidence and it makes us look good to whoever we're asking. All right. A bonus tip. No matter the emotion that's getting in the way, we can also try to strengthen our goal intention. And what that means is asking ourselves 3 questions. Why is this task meaningful? What value does it connect with? And how will my future self feel when I finish? We're shifting ourselves from being reactive and avoiding that negative emotion into being more reflective. And if you don't see a reason why the task is meaningful and it doesn't connect to any of your values, I then would wonder if you can either just not do it. Can you just delete this thing from your to-do list? Or can you delegate it to someone else? It's not always an option, but if we pause and think about it, sometimes it really is. So as we pull this all together here, a few key takeaways. Number one is we all procrastinate. There's never gonna be a moment where human beings stop procrastinating forever. It's just not a thing. Like, who doesn't have a closet, a basement, or garage that needs to be organized, which is a brutal task. But procrastination is a serious problem. It robs us from happiness and fulfillment. It can be a hindrance to our health, our mental health, and our physical health, and possibly have financial consequences. So keep in mind, you now have this framework with 3 steps. Identify the emotion, acknowledge it, and then grab a tool to manage that specific emotion. And with all this being said, like, I hope you all keep in mind that your self-worth is not tied to how productive you are. And I challenge you to delete some stuff from your to-do list this week if it doesn't align with any of your values. So lastly, if you're really working hard or you want to start to figure out task initiation and manage procrastination, this is my favorite resource to dive a little bit deeper into everything we talked about and also begin practicing some of the tools that I shared. Solving the procrastination puzzle, there's no cost, it's free. And it's a really, really awesome, like 10 sessions that you can do over the course of a bunch of weeks to just continue to figure out how to break the procrastination cycle. That is it. Thank you all so much for being here. And there's my contact info. If you want to reach out, shoot me an email or anything like that, I'm more than happy to talk or to answer any questions that you have.